All right, YouTube. Got a quick update about my Condor Argyll Scottish machete. Um, so I've been carrying it every day, and it was just too big. I really like the knife, and I'd rather it be a knife than a machete. And so I went ahead and cut it off and turned it into a broken back seax. And I know that this must sound pretty crazy to take a beautiful knife, well, machete, and turn it into basically a Bowie knife, which it's really, it's a seax, but now it's got, instead of a 12-inch blade, it's got, a good 10 inches, 10 and a half inches of cutting surface, about a 10 and a half inch blade all total. And something else that I know that a lot of people really like condor sheaths. I actually really don't care for this sheath at all. And I've temporarily, I cut it off and I just used some concrete tie wire just to tie the end shut, where I cut it to match what I've done to the knife. Couple things that I never did like this sheath. I have an Undertaker Bowie with this, this same kind of brown leather sheath, and that sheath is perfect. Absolutely love it. I think I probably prefer like Kydex or hard sheaths, in general. But the Undertaker Bowie's sheath is fine. It does its job. It's got one strap that comes over the guard and buttons. This one, what I noticed pretty quickly after carrying it before it was cut down, was that it has gotten so loose that you could pull the knife out with it still snapped. And like I said, now this was before I even cut it. You could just go ahead and pull it out. And the other thing that I really dislike about this sheath is the way that they've got this swivel set up. And you can see I've added actually a cold steel belt loop that I took off of one of my cold steel knives. And I'll try to, as best I can, one-handed, filming with a phone here, which, none of my videos are exactly probably high quality as far as the cameras and stuff. But the worst thing I hated about this sheath from day one was that where the original belt loop is and how far past that belt loop the handle sticks. If you were wearing this on your belt, on your hip, and you tried to sit down in a vehicle, like where your hips would pivot, this would just smack into the back seat, and you couldn't. It was terribly uncomfortable just because of how long that handle is. And I found that by adding about, what is this, probably 2 inches, about a good 2.5 inches of dangle, it puts where your belt line is on your waist a lot closer to the end of that handle, which makes it to where you can sit down in a vehicle and and this isn't crammed up against the back of the seat like this. It's a lot more comfortable. I don't know if I can really explain it without, doing like an actual demonstration of trying to sit in my truck with it on my belt with the original loop, and then sit down with my little jerry rig here. And I know it doesn't look real nice, but I'm very much function over form. If something does what I need it to do, it's okay if it doesn't look cool or super svelte. And so, and the thing was just big. It was another 2.5 inches longer than what it is now. And now that I've actually cut this thing off and, smoothed all the edges down and tried to make it look as pretty as I'm able, I really like it. I actually like this more than carrying a Bowie knife now. And the angle that I cut it off is actually the same angle that, you know, previously the edge came up and had, you know, what would be, I guess, a tanto tip, where it came up, you know, the edge came up and then, you know, kind of 45'd up this way, and the spine, you know, was straight clear to the tip. And so I just did that same angle, but now it's a, you know, a back cut instead of the front tip. Because what I noticed about that tanto tip on this size of knife was that with this tip up here angled up, so you had a straight cutting edge and then your cutting edge angled up, that tip was basically completely useless. You couldn't cut anything with it. You couldn't really chop anything with it. It really wasn't any use for, like, you know, cutting on a cutting board or anything, because, you know, let's say that this is the sharp edge, just for a moment, right? So this would be the same as what the sharp edge actually was. So let's just say this is the sharp edge, and you're cutting, and that edge here is doing nothing. It's really, it's not cutting anything. So let's say I want to go ahead and use this portion of the sharp edge, you know, then you're bringing your hand up, you know, like this. And it was so far away anyway that to have it up at this funky angle, try to cut something, you couldn't get any leverage. But anyway, I'm very happy with the result. I've wood burned a few symbols into the handle, just to make it, you know, a little more Viking-esque. Is that a word? I don't know. But just wanted to share that with y'all. I'm very happy with the outcome. And one other thing that just from chopping, one of the handle scales, and I'm not sure if I can remember which one it is, one of these handle scales has started to try to come loose. And I think it's just the way that it's shaped, that the grain of the wood, you have this little area here that there's really nothing holding it a lot other than just the grain structure of the wood. And I think that it's fracturing through this grain structure here, and it's allowing this little, like, peak to start to wiggle. So the end game with this knife is to replace the handle scales with micarta and get a hard sheath, you know, a kydex sheath made for it, and it can snap in and out. And then make sure that when I make the sheath or have the sheath made, that rather than your belt line on the sheath being here, have it, you know, maybe up here, so that you can still sit down and things without it just being all cramped up and in the way and terrible. And yes, I know the sheath is just ugly as sin now. This is just some steel wire that I just sort of wrangled through some holes just to hold this end shut. I was able to keep the factory rivet there that keeps it, you know, it's riveted together there. And then the two original snaps. And then I've actually added, and that's the kind of the cool thing that worked out with when I added this belt loop attachment from a seax sheath. What I found out was, because this handle is so skinny, that you can actually use the fastener and snap it in. So then when it's hanging from your belt, you've got now 3 snaps holding it, and the handle's not sticking up way past your belt, getting jammed up when you try to sit. So it worked out really well, and I'm very happy with how it performs now with this belt loop attached. But I'd like to get something, you know, a little bit better looking, and you know, maybe a hard sheath instead of the leather. But still a very cool knife, and the original, before it was cut down, I mean, it was an incredible machete. But I think that I prefer, as far as a daily carry, I like Bowie knives with a 10-inch blade, or even less, you know, 10, 9, or 8 inches makes a great everyday carry. And it's big, and it'll cut anything you need to, and chop almost anything you would ever need to chop. But it's not quite so long now, and very, very happy with the outcome. So you know, I hope this was interesting, and don't be too hard on me. I know that this is, it's not pretty. Thanks, guys, and enjoy.